And the real happiness, the real success comes from having an internal barometer that says, I don't need that car. I don't need that bigger house. I don't need that fancy vacation. What I like to do is be on my mountain bike or be with my close friend or eating an ice cream cone or these simple things sometimes are really all about. So you could just having a real clarity about enoughness is a really big part of thriving without any doubt.
Welcome to Gratitude Geek. I'm Candice Fidarti. Today I'm joined by the author of Thriving, How to Create a Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life, Rand Selig. Welcome.
Candice, it's just a pleasure to be with you today.
So you are a former investment banker, scoutmaster, conservationist, and now author. How does all of that work together?
With a lot of intention. It wasn't a sequential thing. I started off after getting my master's in business at Stanford and went to the caverns of Wall Street. And I worked for a dozen years with big firms, and that was terrific. I honed my skills, but along the way, I realized I really was an entrepreneur, and I did not want to go to meetings. I did not want to be told what to do, and I was willing to essentially live and die by the sword. I was willing to run my own company. So I started that over 3 decades ago after thinking very hard about what the company was all about and how to frame my life in a way that aligned with my values and worked for me to participate in more than just the company and a little bit of time with the family. I said, no. I want to have a very broad experience. And that led me to be on many boards over a lot of years, to be the scoutmaster you mentioned, to be a little league coach. I'm a very active conservationist. I call it a roll up my sleeve, because talking is not what it takes action. And so I've had a real sense of purpose through so much of my life. And I'm frankly, very grateful for the life I've had and the difficulties I've been able to overcome.
You have given me a lot to work with there. So you talked about the caverns of Wall Street. What did you mean by that?
Well, Wall Street actually is a street in Lower Manhattan, and it's at one point or another it was the main place where all of the big, well-known firms had their headquarters. Over the last couple of decades, firms have moved to Midtown Manhattan, but the firm I first joined was right off of Wall Street itself, Lehman Brothers, and the caverns, they're very tall buildings right there, and they're kind of narrow streets, and it feels very much like a cavern. So, and there's a certain amount of tension that just kind of is there in the air all around it.
I had a coworker way back in the day who this was back. This is in the last episode, and in the most previous episode, I interviewed the former CEO of the North Face when I worked there 30 years ago. And this brought to mind, there was a guy named Kyle who worked in the warranty department, and he had been a trader on the floor of Wall Street. And now he worked in a very low-key job, fixing tents and for the North Face. This was, of course, 30 years ago. And he was just like, I wouldn't trade anything for anything, right? I'm so happy to be here fixing tents rather than there.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't sound like, I mean, back in the 80s, they kind of glamorized Wall Street with movies and
Sure.
But to me, that just doesn't seem like it would have been a fun thing to do.
Well, it was fascinating. I went to Wall Street because I wanted to really help companies. And I wanted to help good companies doing better, providing better services and products. And it didn't take me long to realize that that's really not what the big firms cared about. They cared about making money.
Yeah.
And this is the big difference in what I decided to do. I was going to pick clients that I enjoyed working with, that stood up for something that I thought was important. And I turned away a lot of business because I didn't think I could communicate well with the CEO, or what they were all about was just it was a bad product, or in my judgment. I mean, it's just totally just my view. And so my moral compass was shiny.
If your moral compass is shiny, you are going in the right direction,
Yeah.
you know?
And you got to take a look. You can't just sort of ignore it. If you want to, be dialed in and feel good about what you're doing, you got to have a moral component
Hmm.
to what it's all about. And you have to, Candace, define success your way. This is
Oh,
another huge, enormous topic. Our society and increasingly around the world are talking money, money, money. And of course, if you don't have any, you're in trouble. But it's not the be all end all. We all
yeah.
know that. We all know that. You got to have relationships. You got to have your health. You got to, have a sense of being a good person, and a kindness. Otherwise, you're not successful. And
Yeah.
that's just, again, my judgment. I met so many people in my life, very wealthy, but I don't think they're successful. Not successful because all around them are failed relationships.
Hmm. Yeah. So back in the day when my kid was little, I defined success but as whether or not I was there when she got on the bus and when she got off the bus. That was being able to plan my entire day around getting her on the bus and getting her off the bus. Was what defined my success for me. And everybody has
Yep,
their own definition. But
that's right.
I'm really proud that I was there for that I had managed to build a
Smart.
business that
Yeah.
was possible, and a very successful business where that was possible.
Yeah, and that's a beauty. I can just picture this. I could just picture what you just said. And the thing too about defining success, you got to redefine it at various times. I mean, different stages of life, different things are important to us, different obligations, different sets of responsibilities. So, what you were all about and what you defined as success 10 years ago could be very different today. And you gotta work at that to say, well, who am I now?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So you and I have something in common. You're a scoutmaster, and I was a Girl Scout leader. And
Great.
I to often tell people that I learned more from being a Girl Scout leader than maybe the girls in this troop learned, right?
Yeah.
So talk about the importance of organizations like Scouting in leadership.
Well, one of the things that I really, really appreciated about being a scoutmaster is working with. Uh, this was back in the time when it was just Boy Scouts and not scouting. These very fine young men who, in some cases, needed another adult to talk to, and that it's a tough time being 14 or 16 or just about to be 18, and there are things you can't talk to your parents about. Maybe you're beginning to pull away and think that what your parents are all about is kind of silly anyway, and it's not for you. So, but that doesn't mean you don't have questions and issues and things that you want to talk about. So, I felt very good about that. I was Scoutmaster at Troop One in Mill Valley, the second oldest troop in the United States. We had 80 scouts, and when I finished up at the troop a bunch of years ago now, we had already created 104 Eagle Scouts. It was a great program. It was a great, great program. And as you say, Candace, I learned a lot. I was not a scout growing up, so I had to learn things. And one of the things about scouting is they pay a lot of attention to training the adult leaders,
Hmm.
whether it's skills like I can chop down a tree with an axe, or wilderness medicine, or any number of really important life level things that can save your life, or save somebody else's life, or just make life more enjoyable.
That's true. I probably never would have taken CPR classes if I hadn't have been required to. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I did because there was a distinct need for it is I've been shooting archery since I was 4 years old. We had a archery
Mm.
range in our backyard my entire childhood. At any point in my childhood, I could have grabbed a bow and gone out and shot, right? And so when it became very apparent that there were not enough archery instructors for the Girl Scout council that I was in, I took the training and I became a certified archery instructor. And it's a lot. It is a lot to train 4 and 5-year-old girls how to shoot a bow and arrow. It's hard.
Yeah.
Most of
Yes.
them don't have the strength to pull it back, but they want to, right? So that experience for me was like, I not only did I learn a lot about business, because there's a lot about business and archery that go hand in hand, right? You've got a target. Are you going to hit the target? How are you going to hit the target? Well, you got to adjust. You got to pay attention to the out. There's so much, but it made me more patient. I got to be involved in a lot more activities and more opportunities for my daughter, because as an archery instructor, I was invited to train archery at multiple day camps and yada yada yada, right? And so
Yeah.
my daughter benefited from that too, because she got to go to those events which she might not have gone to if I wasn't there training archery, right? The whole reason I'm gushing over this is just it was not just she's 25 now, right? She's 25 now, so it's been 10 years since we were involved in Girl Scouts, but it still feels good. It still feels good to know that I spent that decade with my daughter doing fun stuff with her.
Absolutely, and it's just another showcasing of these opportunities that come to us if we take the opportunity to grow and to evolve as into better people.
Yeah.
This is around us, and when that invitation comes, look at it hard. Don't just say, "Nah, I'm busy."
Now that I think about it, though, the fact that we had an archery range in our backyard for my entire childhood, how
Well,
rare is that? Kids used
yeah.
to I mean, all the kids would come over to our house because, and back in the day, both parents worked, right? So here we are
Right.
with bows and arrows in our backyard shooting at a target without any parental supervision.
That's
Does that,
terrific.
does that happen
That's
anymore?
terrific.
Oh,
I hope so.
that's so
Yeah.
funny. So, where did your passion for conservation come from?
Ah, easy to answer that one. I picked my parents well. Uh, my father, amazing person, he's still alive, 102. Mom, doing really well at 98. Mom is a scientist and she loved nature. She loved animals. And as a kid growing up in New Mexico, we'd go on a weekend camping trip, and she'd get up early and catch a trout in a nearby stream. Our first dog was named Chama after the Chama River in New Mexico. And there are many, many things that mom did just to express her love of nature and the environment. And I just gobbled that up. And it stayed with me in my entire life. Actually, when I was thinking, do I want to, I'm tired of the big firms and Wall Street stuff. Maybe I should just, instead of starting my own investment banking firm, maybe I should become a forest ranger. So I chewed on that for a while. So that's how significant a role it plays. And I just love being outdoors. It is so valuable for me to calm me down, to give me a time to self-reflect, and to just be in awe and a sense of humility that comes with just looking closely and saying, wow, this is an amazing bug or a flower or whatever it is. It just, that nature does that for me.
It does that for a lot of folks. So, do you
Mhm.
have a favorite project or cause that you are involved with?
In terms of conservation.
Conservation. Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for asking that, Candace. We support quite a number of different organizations because it's important that they get the support. But I think our favorite for a number of years has been an organization based in Berkeley, California, called Seacology, SEA Ecology. It is the leading organization, nonprofit in the world to save habitat and culture on islands around the world. They have done 400 projects, and the average size of the project is $25,000, which is not a lot of money for us, but it makes the world of difference to these little islands. and they have field representatives. I help them to expand that concept, and the field rep who's living in wherever Fiji or Madagascar has the ear to the ground, and they hear that some little village is planning to sign a contract to cut down the rainforest or to fishing contract, which would really mess up the coral reefs. And so the field rep goes, he talks to the village chiefs and says, "Hey, I heard that story. Is it true?" And they go, "Oh, we're so sorry. It is true. We don't want to. We don't want to do that, but we need the money." "So what do you need the money for?" "Well, we need a new school. We need a new community center." He says, "Well, if Seacology paid for that, would you give us a conservation easement?" They said, "Where's the paper? We'll sign it right now." It's a fantastic organization.
That sounds like a fantastic organization, and who wouldn't want to be the person with their ear to the ground in Fiji?
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
take that job. Can I
Yeah.
volunteer?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there are so many island nations around the globe where that is an issue. I mean, we are, Western culture is encroaching on these island nations because we have our objectives, and why can't we just leave well enough alone? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. No, it's really true. It's a complex interactions going on, and yeah, it's
how
great.
how much do you know about the islands that are becoming engulfed in water? The sea levels are rising and the islands are they're not sinking, the sea levels rising up around them. But how much do you know about that?
Well, I continue to read. I consider myself to be a lifelong learner, so I'm reading all the time about various things. And sea level rise is a very real thing, and there's a whole bunch of islands that don't have much of in the way between the actual landmass and the seas coming at them. And it's making a huge difference. And the younger people who already wanted to leave don't need a second invitation. They're saying, "I'm out of here,"
Yeah.
which makes their future that much more bleak.
So, is there any way to conserve those islands, or are they just going to disappear?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's different levels of answer to that. I think, and I'm not an expert in this by any stretch of the imagination, but on a much longer term basis, what can we do to get the stop the ice caps and the glaciers from melting? Is there something to be done about that? I do think so. It's a set of technology things that are expensive, but make the difference on the rest of the planet. So that's one thing. It's longer term and expensive, as I say. A shorter term, there are some islands I think who are beginning to build buffers. They're again sort of a civil engineering kinds of things where they're trying to create maybe like a wall around. And I'm not sure how effective that is. It's kind of, you can picture it, but um, the sea is a tough creature, and it's what do you do? The wall could be there for a little bit, and then another storm comes, and it's gone.
Yeah.
So
Mother Nature is so powerful. And I live in Michigan. I'm from California. Earthquakes were this thing that happened, right? I lived through a volcano, and I lived in Washington State in 1990 when St. Helens erupted, and then I lived in Texas. Hurricane, 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 right? But I experienced something recently here in Michigan that I'd never even heard of, and it's called a straight line windstorm. And
mm,
it happened during the night, and it was really windy, lots of lightning, and it took. I mean, it looked like a tornado went through, but a tornado that was miles wide. All these trees just flattened, including one in my front yard. Just all these trees just flattened. And this is a phenomenon that happens on the Great Lakes. But it's just Mother Nature.
yeah.
And we didn't get any warning that this was coming. There was no, at least
Mhm.
with a hurricane and a volcano, you get a little
Yeah.
warning ahead of time. Earthquakes,
Right.
you don't get any. Yeah, there might be some tectonic activity that, if you're paying attention, you might know about it ahead of time. But this storm, we had no idea it was going to happen. So
Well,
sometimes you just can't, you can't get in the way of Mother Nature.
no, that's right. Mother Nature bats last.
Exactly. That is a good quote. So, okay, so let's talk about positivity.
Yeah.
You like to talk about reframing bad to positive. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think at any given time, no matter what the situation is, you can make a choice. My book is all about this power we have to make choices, and you can choose to be cynical. You can choose to think that the glass is half empty. You can choose to think that the outcome is going to be terrible and shoot yourself in the foot and self sabotage. There are all these amazing number of behaviors and actually habits. They go on again and again and again. But the other side of it is much more powerful. It gives you power to be positive. Being positive, scientific studies have shown, adds 8 to 9 years to your life. So who wants to run around feeling blue, glum, bad when you could choose to see the upside of things? And so when you look at a situation and you look at it, and it's not really what you're hoping for. It's not going well. It could be at the office, could be at work, it could be in a relationship. You can say to yourself, what am I going to do about this? I'm not going to point the finger and say somebody else did it to me. It's about me doing something now that's going to change that situation so that I feel good about it. It might mean changing jobs. It may mean saying goodbye to a relationship that you've had for a long time, but is now become, you've moved away from each other. It's a toxic relationship for whatever set of reasons. So take a hard look. Take a look at yourself. Take a look at the situation, and then make some decisions. And being positive is, I'm relentlessly positive. So it starts a little easier for me because I don't have to go to the wall switch and turn it on. It's there already for me. But there is a methodology about it that works.
Do you have any specific examples, like life experiences or?
Well, I'll give you one. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. I had to turn my relationship around with my father. My father is his first career was in the Army. Spent 25 years, served in World War II and Korean War and Vietnam. Very highly decorated. He about 5 years ago became a chevalier of the Legion of Honor. He was knighted by the president of France. He's a big guy, but he's got a huge heart. He cares about people enormously. But he's also very narcissistic. So for everybody else, he's generous and kind and charming. For the immediate family, he's tough. He's difficult. He's not very emotional. He's not very warm. So here I am. He's the big bull. I'm the little bull. And we're butting heads. And it went on. It went well into my 40s. And I finally woke up and I said, he's not going to change. He's not. The person who's going to change this is me, and I have the power to do that. I have broad shoulders. What do I need to do? I have to give him respect. He deserves respect. There's so many things about who I am came from him. Other things came from mom, and they couldn't be more different. But I know what the gifts are that he gave me, and I am so appreciative. I said, lean into that. Tell him that you're appreciative of that. Do not expect him to be your buddy. Do not expect him to want to play ball or have fun. That's not who he is. That's not what he's about. And even if he's telling the story for the 23rd time, listen to him. Maybe he'll hear something a little bit different, and he wants to tell it. So let him tell it. And it changed that relationship enormously. I think he said to me about 4 years ago, I'm proud of you. That's the first time in my life he said that.
Oh,
He said you're one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. I said, thank you, Dad. That's very kind of you.
wow.
So I just changed it by taking a look at it and saying I can feel like a victim. I can feel miserable. I can make other people feel miserable because I'm miserable. Or I can say, wait a minute, come on, be bigger than that.
Yeah. I it's really important to pay attention when your elders are telling you stories because I mean my grandfather's wife, I have to differentiate. She was my grandmother, but she was his not my not my father's mother, right? Um, Her brother actually worked on the Manhattan Project. And I wish that when she was alive, I had asked more questions,
Yeah.
right? But I was a cocky kid who thought the Manhattan Project was horrible, and I didn't want to know about it. I didn't want to be involved in it. But I wish that I had asked more questions because it turned out her brother was a freaking big deal, right? And
Yeah.
they named things after this man, and if I had asked more questions, and I would have never met him because he died way before I was born, right? So, but I wish that I had asked questions just to know a little bit more about her. I wish I'd paid more attention when my dad's mother was speaking, to hear those stories too. It's just so let them tell their story and pay attention to it.
Yeah, that's so well said. It's so important, a point to make to your listeners. I think asking questions is, and being curious in general is such a big deal. It makes life a lot more fun. Think about when you had an adventure. Maybe you were taking a trip or something, and you went someplace, and they were eating different kinds of food. They were dressed differently. Their accents or their language was different. It was interesting, and you could be curious about that. And if you're building a relationship with somebody, there's nothing like asking them questions and listening to the answer. You don't have to tell your side of the story. Oh yeah, I was in Paris, too. No, no, let them tell about their experience. That's fine. Ask another question. When they're ready, they'll ask you questions about you and your experience. It's just really great.
It's so hard to hold yourself back when you want to, because a lot of times when people are saying, "Oh, I did that too," it's because they want to have something in common with you, you
True.
know.
True.
But maybe they just need to tell their
Yeah.
story, and you need to listen.
And everybody has a story, and everybody wants to be seen. So when you're sitting, when you don't have the need, not so needy about you doing talking, being able to ask questions and listen. Wow,
Yeah,
wow, big deal.
that was the lesson I needed to learn today. So thank you, Rand. I appreciate that. I, it isn't that. And if you are a friend of mine and I have interrupted you in the middle of a sentence because I got excited, it's because I'm excited, right?
Yeah.
But it isn't from a lack of appreciating the story I was hearing. It was because I was excited, and that's why I blurted it out. Right?
Oh, totally cool. Totally
You
cool.
know?
I get it. Excitement. It's obvious you're excited. It's obvious with your laughing and enjoying things. It's infectious. I will tell you that, Candace. It's infectious.
Why be in a bad mood when you can be in a good mood? You know?
It's kind of a choice. Again, it's kind of a
It's
choice.
not kind of a choice. It is a choice. It
Yeah.
is very much a choice. And I because I chose to laugh and smile, I think my life was more rich than if I had chose to frown.
Well, I want to share with you an absolutely lovely quote from Mother Teresa. She says, "The smile is the beginning of love."
Oh.
And you think about that. I think about that when I go outdoors in nature, like we were talking a few minutes ago, and I feel it. I feel my face, getting a smile on because I'm looking at something absolutely remarkable, something beautiful. And then I'm walking down the street and I see people, and I've got my smile on, and they smile back, and
Uh-huh.
I go, oh my gosh, it's actually physiologically impossible to be angry and smile at the same time. I challenge anybody out there to try to be angry at somebody and smile at them. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And so that's a tool. If you find yourself being angry, well, then say, my antidote right now is to smile.
And see, you just smiled and I smiled.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so from your book, you have some benefits of positivity. Do you want to share what those are?
Um, again, a long conversation. I mentioned, it adds years to your life. It creates better relationships with people without a doubt. It makes you internally happier and more available to take on new adventures. Because there's some things. I mean, life is a series of experiments. Some things work and some things don't. But if you approach things in a kind of scary way, I'm afraid, I'm angry, again, these are choices, and you take those on. But if you decide, no, I'm going to be positive about this, and it may still not work, and I might have to retweak it. I might have to throw away the experiment, try a different experiment. That's okay. It creates the adventure of life that makes life so worth living.
You know, when you talk about Mother Teresa and the smile is the beginning of love. I know we're going backwards a little bit here, but what do you do? What happens when a baby smiles for the first time?
Everybody else goes goo goo.
Uh-huh. I mean that first smile is that you just melt, you know? And if you're the lucky person to be the recipient of the smile,
Yeah,
you know, it's just magical. And that is the first way babies learn to communicate, crying and smiling
really.
and
That's
laughing, you know?
I, I have a 7-month-old granddaughter who I look at her and she does this smile. She's got her big eyes. She's doing stuff. And I think, wow, she's on a road to being very manipulative. It's a joke.
No, but
Totally a joke.
it but maybe not manipulative may be a derogatory term, but if she's got a winning smile at 7 months old, she's well on her way to being very successful,
That's it.
you
That's
know.
really right.
And
That's really right.
because it's
Yeah.
about framing. I mean, when I was in seventh grade, I had a teacher tell one of my classmates that I was bossy. And of course, he told me, and I could have done two things at that point. I could have been mad or I could have
Yeah.
owned it. And I decided at that moment, 13 years old, I'm going to own being bossy. And guess what? I'm still bossy to this day, you know, but it's a good thing for me, you know.
Yeah.
If I had been a boy, I would have
Yeah.
been called a good leader,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
one of the issues that I have had to deal with, and that I talk a lot about. I'm doing, a lot of podcasts and doing a lot of in-person talks because my book is, people want to hear about it, and the one of the issues is control. So I thought up until maybe 10 years ago that so much of my success in life, professional or personal, was because I was in control. And it mattered to me a lot. I'm very organized, very disciplined. I'm always prepared, Boy Scout thing. And then I kind of realized, wait a minute, oh, get real, guy. What's true is that I do control my attitude. I control the amount of effort I put into something. I control my behavior and I control my actions. But that's me. What about the rest of things? What about all these other people? Well, I don't control them. Come on, be real. I don't control. I might influence them, and I can expand that influence by doing certain things, and I can shrink that influence to like zero also. So that was a big wake up call for me, and it was a big growth moment, for me.
Well, it is true that the only thing you can control is the way that you respond to what
Yeah,
happens to you. And choosing to be happy is and positive is a great way to respond. So maybe one of the reasons why your book is doing so well right now is because prosperity and happiness don't always go together in the mind of the American culture. A lot
yeah,
of folks think that prosperous people are just horrible people, right? Historically, some of the most successful people in the world have been horrible people. Let me take that back. Some of the most successful people in the United States have been horrible people historically, but that doesn't have to be true. I mean, I look at people like Bill and Melinda Gates and I think, holy moly, the good that they have done in this world. There are people who don't like them, but the good
yeah.
that they have done in this world is pretty phenomenal. So talk about that.
Well, we were talking about how important defining success is, and it's a personal decision. Everybody I've met kind of does their own little version of it, and success is not one thing. It's a group of things, and if you're doing well, it's an integrated set of things. You're aligned. You're taking care of your body. You're taking care of your mind. You're taking care of your heart. You're recognizing that you're a little person in the big vastness of the universe. You're handling your financial matters appropriately, not spending gobs of money and then you don't have any at the end of the day kind of stuff. So there's lots of components to defining success your way. I really encourage people, take a look at that, take a hard look at that. Just decide what enough is. We're living in, again, a world where there's never enough. You turn on the TV or you go to social media and somebody just did something, you go, wow, wouldn't that be cool to have that? Well, those are external things. And the real happiness, the real success comes from having an internal barometer that says, I don't need that car. I don't need that bigger house. I don't need that fancy vacation. What I like to do is be on my mountain bike or be with my close friend or eating an ice cream cone, or these simple things sometimes are really all about. So you could just having a real clarity about enoughness is a really big part of thriving, without any doubt.
Yeah. And knowing what brings you peace and brings you happiness. Some people really don't know what makes them happy because they've been miserable for so long. They don't know how to be happy.
Right. That's right.
Do you have advice?
Um, well, there is, to me, no substitute for spending time with yourself and taking a look. A lot of people have said your book is very helpful because you walk us through different questions to ask yourself. It's almost like a workbook in some ways. You don't want to rush through that stuff. There are things you can do to check out how you score on your personality. There's the big five personality called Ocean. And you can see where are you. You can determine whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. We live in an extroverted world. So what are you going to do to take care of yourself as an introvert in that world? So there are a variety of things, but knowing yourself and knowing what's important to you, not to your mom, not to your dad, not to your boss, not to your spouse. I mean, you have to align. You're not going to just say, oh, well, you're stupid and I'm getting rid of you after 20 years of marriage or something. I'm not advising that, but knowing yourself and then being able to talk about it. And I write things down. This is it's kind of a law of physics, which I don't fully understand, but when it goes from my brain down my arm to my hand to my pen or pencil onto a piece of paper, I look at it, it becomes clearer. I figure out I don't really get it yet. I better keep working at massaging this. And once I've got that, then I can take action. But until I've cleared up what's going on, especially emotions, are all intertwined. When I'm unhappy about something, it's not because I'm one thing, one emotional thing. No, it's usually a group of things. I got to take it apart and I got to figure out what I did and what the other person or people did and be honest about it. It's not like I'm never doing anything bad. I doesn't happen. So that look at yourself, and it's not all a big grind. I mean, a big part of my happiness comes from knowing myself and looking at how I've grown. Boy, that makes me feel just really good.
It is true that we have layers. Our reactions are a result of layers of things being piled on top of us. Some of them that we have no control of. And again, the only thing we can control is how we respond. But sometimes it's hard to respond positively when you have layers and layers of crap piled on top of you.
True.
But
and some people
crap
need
is
help.
fertilizer.
Oh, I like that. That's great. and it's true that we're better now today than we've ever been before in terms of seeking help. A counselor, somebody that's not that expensive, more people are more open to that. You don't have to say, oh, I'm getting counseling, and then like you're a bad, broken person. No, it's helpful. It's helpful in relationships. You don't have to wait till it's completely broken and you can barely think it's going to ever be salvaged. You can do it before then, just tune-ups. I have many friends who do every year or two, they do a tune-up with their partner. whether it's business or a life partner, to say let's clean up some of the stuff. We keep on coming back. It's a repeating thing. We don't agree. We argue. The temperature rises. Let's get some help to understand it better and move it away because it's not serving us.
Yeah, that's important in business partnerships, marriage, everything. If you, a lot of folks give up on their marriage way too soon. They give up over things that can be easily resolved if you talk about it, right? I mean, there are reasons to divorce that your spouse cheats on you or is a drug addict or whatnot, but for a lot of folks, they just give up on their marriage too early or too easily because it's hard. Marriage is hard, right?
Yeah,
And,
sure,
you know,
sure.
you, you have to be a little bit stubborn too, you know?
Yeah, well, I've known my wife for 45 years. We've been married 43 years, and we get asked that question a bunch. People see us in action, they go, "Wow, what's going on with you two? It's amazing." I say, "Look, you see us now because we're operating well together, and we have a really great relationship. But there are times when we do butt heads. There are times when it's painful. There are times when our communication styles we can't hear each other. There's something about what did you mean by that? I don't know. And then temperature rises. So we have to keep being committed to each other. We have to keep all these years later we keep looking for things that we want to do together, and we give ourselves permission to have friends other than each other. And I have lots of my own friends. She has lots of her own friends, and we have friends in common. And so sometimes I'll say, "Hey, would you like to go with me to have lunch with so and so?" And she says, "That's very nice, but no, that's your friend. Just tell me about it afterwards. That'll be enough for me." So it's a variety of things, and there are some really great books. There's some amazing people who've written about marriage and long enduring relationships where I've read some of these books. One of the things about my book that people say they love is the back of the book. There's 75 books that I've read that really impacted me. And I have a paragraph about each of those books. So that may be enough. You may say, I've read the
Yeah.
paragraph, I get it. But you may say, no, I want to read the whole book now.
That's an
So
excellent thing to include in a book.
thank you.
I
Thank
love
you.
I love that idea because I mean, I have a friend whose podcast is the Biz Book Broadcast, and she interviews different people about their favorite business book. And it's hard to choose your favorite.
Yeah, that's right. That's
I've
right.
been on I've been on her show once, and I'm about to be on her show again in a couple of weeks. And she made me choose my books ahead of time, and choosing the books was difficult. It was really difficult.
Yeah, and the way I've organized this is by chapter. So the different themes. There's books on the environment, there's books on money, there's books on emotions, there's it's on and on and on. And
But
you can
if
just go to that section and go, oh, these three books, I want to read these three.
Well, if you curate the books in a
Yeah,
great way, I mean, curation is so important when you're trying to, because all the ideas that ever were have already happened, right? All we are
yeah,
doing
that's right.
today is taking these ideas and moving them forward with the tech. A lot of these ideas, technology has to catch up to them, right?
Yeah,
And
that,
technology is catching up to some ideas. There are ancient ideas, like Leonardo da Vinci came up with the idea of flying in an airplane centuries before an airplane was developed. It just took time for the technology to catch up to the idea. And that's what's happening. There is no idea that anybody has today that somebody didn't already have. It's just a matter of having the right circumstances to implement and execute that idea. I just ranted and I can't remember the whole reason why I was. Oh, I was going to tell you a story about my parents. So my parents were married for 40 something years before my mother passed away. 40, I'm going to say 43 years before my mother passed away. And they fought a lot when I was a kid.
mm,
They fought a
mm,
lot.
mm.
Um, but anytime music started to play and they came together to dance, it was like watching something out of a fairy tale, watching the two of them dance. If we were at a wedding and they went out on the dance floor, the next thing you know, the whole dance floor opened up and everybody surrounded my parents and my parents took over the dance floor. They were like this magical couple. So it didn't matter how much they fought, they always had that thing that made them magical together.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what they fought about.
Yeah.
But I sure do remember watching them dance on that dance floor.
There you go. Beautiful. Beautiful story.
You know,
Beautiful story.
so
Yeah.
it takes work, and
It
not every
does.
it takes work. Just putting in a positive spin on everything. All right. So, Rand, is there anything that you wanted to cover today that I didn't ask you?
Well, I do want to come back to a central theme of gratitude.
That's a good theme.
It's a huge theme. One of my favorite quotes, my book has lots of quotes, and people say they're in such great, you've located them well, they really amplify a point you're making. And one of my favorite quotes about gratitude is the struggle ends when gratitude begins.
That's a good
To
quote.
me, that holds so much power. I'm button up against some problem. I've got a challenge, and I think, oh wow, okay, I have to pull out all the stops, get this thing done. And then I think, well, wait a minute. Think about what you're coming to the table with. Look at all the things you're grateful for, all the support you have. So I just go, wow, the struggle seems to melt away at that moment, and it's just a very very powerful thing. It's I have a whole chapter on gratitude. It's that important.
It's important for everything. I mean, if people don't feel appreciated, they don't want to work for you. If people don't feel appreciated, they don't want to be married to you. If people don't feel appreciated, they don't want to talk to you if you're their parent, they don't want to talk to you if they don't feel like they're appreciated. You know, they don't want to be if your kids don't appreciate you, you don't want to be the parent, right? You know, it's so important to have that feeling of appreciation and have that feeling of gratitude. And appreciation and gratitude are two different things. One of them is an emotion and one of them is an expression. You feel the gratitude, you express the appreciation.
And another big thing that I think is true is that being grateful, having gratitude leads to being generous. You're talking about very wealthy people who are, maybe not people you'd want to spend any time with. And there are great people like Bill and Melinda Gates who have been very generous. There are a lot of people who do something with their wealth, but you know, people who don't have a lot of wealth can have gratitude and then be generous. And generous isn't necessarily just a money thing. It's
Mm-mm.
being generous with your time. It's
Mm-hmm.
being generous by listening.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to be generous.
Here's an example of being generous that doesn't cost anything. There was a local nonprofit that had a break-in, and they were trying to get some things replaced that had been stolen from the break-in. And I had a connection. I have a connection that could easily replace the items that were stolen through a in-kind donation. And so I just asked the right people, and I got the stuff taken care of. I wasn't involved other than making sure that the two people who could that the nonprofit and the person who could provide what needed to be provided were connected to each other. It was such a simple thing for me to do, but I made a huge impact for the nonprofit.
We live in a great town. It's 14,000 people. It's beautiful, and there's lots of people who are working together, whether it's schools or whatever other things they commit to, which is great. Well, we had a break-in. We had a break-in a bunch of years back, and the robbers were looking for specific things. They wanted to get in, get out, and take their stuff. Well, they took nearly all my wife's jewelry. Well, for a moment, well, it didn't last very long. She felt really horrible. Is that a sense of violation about it? And then we talked. I listened. I asked her some questions. She says, it's just stuff. There's some heirloom things there that I will miss, but I had more stuff than I really ever needed. And I said, well, bravo on you. So much of stuff is just in the way. Well, she told a bunch of her friends, and they said, we're come on over. We're going to have a little party. Well, she didn't know it, but when she arrived there, everybody had brought like 3 or 4 pieces of jewelry and said, Carol, take whatever you'd like. So she came home, and it was the
Oh,
most beautiful thing. And it made her feel, one, these relationships with these friends doing that, but the kindness
yeah.
involved with that on top of something that was unpleasant. One saying it was just stuff, and then having her friends step up and say, "Hey, here's some earrings, here's a necklace, here's a
Well, and
bracelet."
some husbands, some parents, they give jewelry as a gift, and the next thing you know, you have 12 pairs of diamond earrings. I don't need 12 pairs of diamond earrings, but you don't ever do anything with them. And so that was just
Yeah,
giving them away like that was, just that I got a little verklempt. You know?
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember this one year, my mother and my mother-in-law both gave me heirloom rings. They just passed rings down to me the same year for Christmas. It was a really interesting Christmas because we were all together and both of them gave me rings that were their own that they would just pass down to me. Now I have these heirlooms from both of these women that I can give to my daughter, right? But it was, they were done with them. They didn't have any use for them anymore. So why not
Moving
give
on.
them to somebody who would appreciate
Yeah,
them?
yeah.
It's
Great,
that
great.
I love that. I love that story.
Mhm.
And they mean more to me than if I had purchased something for myself.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly right. Well, there's lots and lots about decluttering and some really helpful stuff. But if it doesn't give you joy, you're not using it, doesn't fit anymore, well, allow somebody else to enjoy it. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah. There was about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, there was a news story I saw about younger families today starting out don't really like the china and the silverware of their grandparents. And so these, this really nice china and silverware isn't being passed down. It's ending up in secondhand stores. And I'm like, I'll take that any day because of the story, right? The story behind those pieces.
Yeah,
The story means so much.
right. It is.
Rand Selig, this is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
Wow. I'm in touch with that. And in fact, my book is dedicated to all the people who loved me into being and helped me thrive. And I have a list of those people. And some are people who it was a love thing, it was a heart thing. And some people, they were mentors or helped me thrive. And some people were just so enjoyable to be with. They were just friends, but it was comfortable and good things to talk about and good questions to ask each other and that kind of stuff. So I have that. So for me to distill that down to a person or two is not an easy thing to do because I'm so rich with this sense of gratitude about these people. I have to start with my mother and father. They're inside me, and they're you know who I am is so much a product of the gifts they gave me early on. But then I became my own self. It wasn't, I'm not in their shadow in that way. But I say one of the three best decisions I ever made in my life was marrying my wife, and it's been a long time. We're very different, very, very different about a lot of things. There are so many times when we are working well together. Sometimes it's like the Olympic baton being passed. I think of something and then she executes, or she has an idea and I go, "That's a great idea. Could we add this and this to it?" She said, "Oh, yeah, that makes it even better." She has been supportive of me throughout all of this stuff. Running my own company has been a challenge. But she's there. I had to get away from a terrible boss before I started my own company. I must have bored her nearly to tears for years, coming home with stories about this terrible boss. She listened patiently. She's an amazing person, and I learned from her, and I feel very, very grateful.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for grateful micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. To connect with Rand Selig, head over to the show notes at gratitudegeek.com. This is episode 241. I've been your host, Candice Rodarty. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.
Perfect. Sorry to make you cry. That happens a lot on this show.
No, it's a good thing. It's a sweet thing. I tapped into a real live nerve, and by putting words to it, it just made it palpable. It's great. Thank you. It's a gift, actually.
I know we can make it easier than they can. We can make it better than before. I know we can make it